today I'm going to be talking about my first 100% loss in the stock market, and it sucks big time because I lost 100% of my investment through no fault of my own in a company called Patisserie Valerie. I'm really annoyed at some of the oversight. I'm annoyed at the auditors. I'm annoyed at Luke Johnson. I'm annoyed especially at the financial officer, Chris Marsh, and the absolutely catastrophic leadership of the previous CEO, Paul May. So I'm going to talk today about the investment, what happened, what has come to transpire, what we now know about Patisserie Valerie, which is an absolute shell of a company by now, and the lessons I've learned from making my first 100% stock market loss. So I'm going to talk first about the investment. Patisserie Valerie is a cake and coffee shop here in the UK. It specialises mostly in high-end cakes, high-end patisserie style French, Belgian cakes that we don't really have much of here in the UK. We have more of a, as the UK viewers would be aware, of kind of like a bakery tradition where we've got Greggs, you've got a £1 kind of custard slice or a Claire, or these very kind of mass-produced, if you like, with little care, maybe even machine-made products. So Patisserie Valerie was very high-end. It would charge anywhere upwards from £3 for a cake. Very high-end, very kind of nice Belgian-style decorations, and you really felt like you having a premium experience. Now, I myself got the tip off about the investment from a friend. I looked at the company. The metrics were outstanding. The margins were outstanding, especially for a cake company. And from what I saw, it really looked like it had an economic moat. Now, I was confused. I was very conflicted as to where this moat was coming from. After all, this was just a cake shop. How were they able to maintain such high margins compared to their peers? But who was I to doubt? I mean, they were selling cakes at £3.50 at the end of the day. That's a pretty expensive cake, so I assumed that they were making the large margins, and that's where it was coming from. So I made the investment into my account. I put originally £1,000 into the investment, and by the time that things went all from bad to worse, and from worse to nothing, I had about £1,500 invested in the company. So what happened? Well, I think it was around November time, middle of November. I think it was like the 10th or the 11th of November, or October. Apologies. It was in October. I woke up to an alert on my phone to say that trading in Patisserie Valerie shares have been suspended. I was shocked. I mean, this was a company that was expanding. They were opening a new facility in Manchester. Their profits had jumped 17%. They'd upped their dividend. All of a sudden, I'm seeing that a winding up order has been put in for the company's main subsidiary in Stone Beach Limited, and that shares were suspended. I just cannot tell you the fear that overcame me when I learned that it had trading had been suspended. I mean, trading's never really suspended for good reasons, are they? So it transpired that what originally was thought to be a £10 million hole in the account was a £20 million hole in the account, and then a £40 million hole in the account. And what had happened was that the previous the current at that time Chief Financial Officer, Chris Marsh, had been involved in fraud with the company, along with obviously some other staff. And what they were doing was massively inflating the profits of Patisserie Valerie, and the company, what it looked like on the books was absolutely nothing like the company now. So that's what happened to a certain extent. And what we know now is that in fact that sales of Patisserie Valerie have been sliding 4% over the previous 2 years, despite this ambitious kind of like rollout program. It was just a complete disaster, and I cannot imagine the chaos that was going on inside of the company. Now we know, of course, that suppliers weren't being paid, that some suppliers were generating fake invoices, colluding with the company, and we also know that landlords weren't being paid. They have to send in bailiffs, and the company was an absolute mess. So what annoys me more than anything is the way that this fraud transpired. I mean, the methods that they were using, according to a leaked PwC report that I've just read articles on it, obviously I haven't had sight on it, I shouldn't say leaked, if anything, people have who have read the report have gone on to divulge information, and they were saying that one way they were inflating cash on the balance sheet was to send in checks to the bank, and then the checks would bounce, but this would temporarily, artificially increase the kind of cash on the balance sheet, which to me is crazy. You'd think that's something that auditors would pick up, right? But evidently not. So I lost, as of now, 100% of my investment. As you see, Luke Johnson failed, despite pumping some money into the company. I mean, fair enough, but you should have had better oversight. He has pumped 10 million pounds net into the company. They issued a ton of new shares, and basically everybody who participated in that block listing, everybody who held shares before the suspension, have been absolutely burnt and left with not one penny, and it's absolutely criminal. Now, I appreciate in the stock market that you take risks. I appreciate that investments don't always turn out like you want them to turn out, right? And this is where I'm coming on to my lessons learned here. Now, you appreciate that not all investments are going to turn out how you expected. And that's fair enough. I've made some absolutely dreadful investments that I happily hold my hands up to. I invested in BT, which was a terrible investment. I mean, high capex, absolute junk company that was competing in the TV space, which was highly competitive and absolutely burning money, if you ask me. I mean, that's a lesson I learned. Don't invest in high capex companies who are competing in fields that have no economic moat, where you've got massive cost to earn television rights, and I mean, just don't buy those type of businesses. Fair enough. That's a lesson learned, and I put that down to experience. But I mean, what am I supposed to learn from this? What am I supposed to learn from a fraud? What am I supposed to learn from the fact that I read the metrics? The metrics were saying good things. The performance appeared to be great. I had share price appreciation, which isn't necessarily a sign of success, but I mean, it's a good indicator, right? What am I supposed to learn from this? So, I mean, one lesson learned is to be very, very wary of companies, even if the books look good, that especially if they're on the alternative investment market or the AIM. Maybe these sort of companies are more prone to fraudulent activity because it's more kind of like a light touch regulation. But then again, I mean, you had Enron in the States, right? So you're always going to be open to fraud. So the only thing that really comes from this is to maybe pick companies with a very long history. Patisserie had just IPO'd in 2014, and to make sure that you have a very diversified portfolio. But then, I mean, you can always like diversify your portfolio by holding too many holdings, and in the end, I mean, your good picks end up as nothing, right? Because you've spread yourself too thin. So I've gone through a phase where I was consolidating my holding, and I kept Patisserie in there as part of that consolidation. I sold off some of my other shares, such as National Grid, BT, companies that I didn't really feel good about. I trimmed all my tobacco stocks, Philip Morris, Imperial Brands, all into one stock with that here. So I was consolidating my portfolio. So it's really made me kind of stop and think now, and right, okay, do I really want to be holding a lot in any one company? I mean, 15% of my portfolio is in Facebook. Do I want that? Is Facebook potentially engaging in fraud? I mean, I doubt it, but then I doubted that Patisserie Valerie was as well. So it's caused a big kind of question to me now. And I think one of the lessons learned is that the money you put in the stock market, even if things are going well, even if you diversify yourself, even if you think, well, this company has 20 million pound net cash, I mean, how bad can it get? I mean, even if like sales drop, even if they start closing stores, I mean, they got 20 million cash in the balance sheet. I'm never going to have 100% loss, right? Well, it can happen. So that's my rant, if you like, about Patisserie Valerie, and I'm sorry if it is a rant and it hasn't been kind of condensed as my other videos, but I mean, I think it's just important that people out there realise that investors do make mistakes. 100% losses are absolutely possible, and to maybe watch out for these smaller alternative investment market shares. And it absolutely sucks. It's really set me back. I mean, I've completely flopped and underperformed the market now. I mean, losing this money off the bat in the market is 100% loss of no fault of my own. So thank you for watching the video. Maybe to make up for my massive loss, if you could give me a like to this video and to subscribe, it'd be greatly appreciated.